Hey everyone, it's Casey. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing another underrated book, and this time it's going to be an entire series. So the series I'm going to be talking about, it's by John Marston. It's called, the first book is called Tomorrow When the War Began, and the whole series is called the Tomorrow series. I actually read this on ebook, so I don't have the physical copies of them, but here's a picture of what the first book looks like, the cover. So these books are they take place in Australia. John Marston is an Australian author, and I think that they're super popular in Australia. I definitely think, if you're from Australia, you've probably heard of these books, but they're not as popular here in America. I've never heard anyone else talk about them. I'm not sure how, I found them out. I know my brother and my mom have, read at least the first book, so I'm guessing one of them found it out, and then I just kind of followed in their footsteps. So this takes place in Australia, and it's kind of like if you've ever seen the movie Red Dawn. It's very reminiscent of that. So these, they're 15 and 16. 6 of them go camping one weekend. It'd kind of be over Labor Day or Memorial Day. It was over kind of a big holiday in Australia. So they go camping in this really desolate area called Hell. And then when they come out of Hell, 4 days later, they realize that their country has been taken over. And that their hometown, everyone they know, was kind of corralled in their fairgrounds. So the first book is mainly about the struggle of what should they do? Should they act? Should they just go back to hell? Should they turn themselves in so at least they'll be with their family? Should they do guerrilla fighting? And then the books just kind of ramp up from there. I don't know if I said this, but there's 7 books total, and then there is an kind of spin-off series that it is either 2 or 3 books. So I can't really talk too much about the later books, obviously, because I don't want to give too much away. So I started reading these when I was 15 or 16, and I just finished them January of 2017. I finished the last 2 books in the series. Because they are about war, they are emotionally draining. And this isn't not really a main spoiler or anything, but these are emotionally draining books. Main characters die. There's one that's later on in the series that really affected me. So they're just exhausting to read. So I don't think this is a series that you can binge read and just read all 7 right at once. It's more maybe read 1 a month if you really wanted to get through it, or 1 every 2 months or something. But I would highly recommend these books. They are so good. They were written back in the 90s, at least the first one was, but that's not really a problem. The only old thing that is ever referenced is a fax machine, and it was barely a blimp. I just remember because when I started rereading them, because I started from book 1, I reread it over again in 2016 when I was really trying to amp up to finish a series, and that was the only thing that jumped out at me was oh, they just mentioned a fax machine. And then also, if you're concerned about that they take place in Australia, if you're not from Australia, that's not even a big thing. There's in the later books, they have an index that'll tell you the Australian words, because they have different words for concrete was one I remember. Some of their 4-wheelers, they don't call them 4-wheelers. I think they call them utes, UTE or something. I think that's right. It's been kind of a while. I read these I finished it in January, so it's been 9 months since I read them. But that's not really a problem, because even if you don't know what that word is, you can figure it out in the context. It's not that big of a deal. This is so hard to talk about the books without giving the spoiler for the whole series. But I think if you like the Hunger Games, if you because it's it's interesting because it's kind of like dystopian, but it's more realistic dystopian. It's like if the Hunger Games would have taken place during, like, before, when the capital was starting to take over and when they got divided into districts, like if it would have taken place during that war instead of like 75 years later, I think this is what this book would have kind of been like. It is, so it's definitely kind of struggles with that thing that a lot of YA dystopians do of having teenagers kind of be the saviors or whatever. It struggles with those things too, but definitely in like a realistic way, whereas like the Hunger Games was never really realistic. Also, I really liked this point about the book is that the enemy was never named. It never said like China like took over Australia. It never said. It could have been anyone, and I think that that's really powerful because it allows like anyone to read this. Because obviously, say like America would have been the enemy, I probably wouldn't have wanted to read that book because no one wants to for their country to be the enemy. So it's kind of this nameless enemy. But these are definitely, like, if you're, especially the later ones, if you're squeamish with death and with killings, I mean, you're probably not going to want to read these. It's not, like, it's not to the point where, like, it's disturbing. Like, it's not Game of Thrones or, the 300, where just massive people are getting killed. But there is, like, hand-to-hand combat where our main characters are, like, fighting for their lives, like, hand-to-hand with the enemies. So if that kind of makes you squeamish, then maybe don't read these. Also, what I really like is that the first book has been made into a movie. It was made into, like, an Australian movie. And you can actually get that on iTunes, because that's how I watched it. It's not the best, like, it's not bad, like, the quality. It was, like, released in Australian movie theater, so the quality is there. I don't know if it tells the story, like, as effectively as I would have liked, but if you read the first book, definitely, rent it from iTunes. It's, like, $2.99. Also, they made the first book into a TV show that in Australia, and that was on just, like, either this April or April 2016. Like, my years are just flying by. I haven't seen that, though, because I haven't found a way to watch it online. But just so you know, like, these books are, like, classics in Australia. I would assume. I don't know. I've never been to Australia, but... So, yeah, I would definitely recommend these. They are such an underrated book. Like I said, I don't know anyone else who's read them. I don't hear people on BookTube talk about them. They are so good, so action-packed. So, let me know down in the comments if you've ever read them, or even if you've ever heard of them, because, I don't know, then we can talk about it. Okay, thanks, bye.